Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Russell here, and we just received news that for the Canada Worker Lockdown benefit, which you may be familiar with, the $300 per week benefit that has gone out to people who are in regions that have at least a 50% lockdown, well, there has been an extension of some of the rules around the Canada Worker Lockdown benefit, and it allows for more people to be eligible for this benefit for longer. So in today's video, we're going to go over exactly what this extension is, how many more times they're actually even allowed to extend this benefit, and how they might do that, and what that means for you. But before we do, make sure to subscribe to the channel and check out all of the links in the description. Whenever you use them, you're directly supporting the channel and more Canadian content like this being made on the YouTube platform. All right, let's get into this. There was no press conference, there was no major announcement, but there was a tweet. So let's go take a look at this. So here's the announcement. Kind of odd that they didn't make some sort of press conference for this, but Trudeau here is saying, update to make sure you, your workers, and your business have what you need to get through ongoing provincial and territorial public health restrictions. We're extending the expanded eligibility, we'll get back to that, to the local lockdown program and Canada Worker Lockdown benefit until March 12th, another important date we're going to talk about soon. He goes on here saying, in other words, if your work is affected because of a public health lockdown, or if your business is subject to capacity limiting restrictions, this help will continue to be there for you. For more information on the support that's available, click here. So again, a couple key things to remember. The first one here, the end date of this extension, we'll get into the context of it in a second, is March 12th, and this is the context we need to get right here, expanded eligibility. What exactly does this mean? You might remember that when the Canada Worker Lockdown benefit was originally announced back, I believe, December 17th of 2021, well, they passed the bill and made it through the legislative process, but there was a major problem with it. This problem was that the language in the bill made it so that the only people that were eligible were people in areas with a 100% lockdown, where businesses have to fully close. It didn't have any sort of the capacity restriction sort of worked into it. It was an all or nothing kind of support, where your entire region had to be in full lockdown. And based on where we are in the pandemic, there's not many places that are going with this 100% lockdown move. Many went only 25% or 50%. So the government, after getting a lot of criticism because they were like, hey, nobody can apply for the Canada Worker Lockdown benefit, they said, okay, we're going to change the definition of what a lockdown region is so that any place that is experiencing 50% or more capacity restrictions, those regions are able to receive the Canada Worker Lockdown benefit, as well as some certain business supports. So that's what this March 12th date is. It's not an extension of the program itself, because the program actually runs until May, I believe, but we'll get into that in a second. But it is an extension of the expanded eligibility, so the change of the definition of what a lockdown region is from that full lockdown to the 50% partial lockdown. They're extending that definition, which was supposed to end February 12th. That was the deadline for the end of that definition of a lockdown region, and they've extended that an additional month to March 12th. But let's get in here to the official press release that is sort of linked here in Trudeau's tweet, where we get into a little bit more detail. This comes straight from the Department of Finance Canada. That's the area of the government that Chrystia Freeland, as the finance minister, sort of looks over. And they say that the federal government will continue to support Canadian workers and businesses where provincial and territorial public health restrictions, including capacity restrictions, remain in place. Today, Chrystia Freeland and Trudeau and Carla Qualtrough, the Minister of Employment, announced the federal government's intention to extend enhanced key support programs, we'll come back to intention, to ensure Canadians are protected and workers and businesses continue to get help through ongoing public health restrictions. The reason it says intention here is because in order to make a change like this, there is some sort of procedure that they have to go to, even though this is a regulatory change. On the channel, we've talked about regulatory changes and legislation changes, and those processes are a lot different. In order to make a legislation change or to put a new bill into law to make some major change, they actually have to pass that through the House of Commons, get support from other parties, so on and so forth. To make a regulatory change, which is what this is, they don't have to do that, because inside of the legislation or the bill that they originally passed, they wrote in some wiggle room that they were able to make changes and sort of make flexible so that they wouldn't have to go through the whole lawmaking process again. They could sort of just tweak these details, and that's exactly what they're doing. And they emphasize this here. Again, they're using their regulatory, not legislation, regulatory authority to provided in Bill C2. The government intends to propose expanding access announced on December 22nd 2nd, 2021. That's the date that they expanded the eligibility from 100% lockdown to 50% lockdown to work for Canada Worker Lockdown Benefit by 1 month until March 12th, 2022. They go into saying that this is for the local lockdown program where certain small businesses are able to receive actual wage and rent subsidies from 25% up to a maximum of 75%, depending on the amount of revenue they've lost. But for most individual Canadians, they'll be more familiar with the Canada Worker Lockdown Benefit, and they're saying here that eligibility would continue to include workers in regions where capacity limiting restrictions of 50% or more are in place, the same sort of amount, the $300 per week that it was before, for workers affected by COVID and who are either unable to work or have lost 50% or more of their income as a result. And they say that this isn't even going to cost them any more money because less people have been applying for the Canada Worker Lockdown Benefit than they thought would. And they're saying that actually this expansion and this extension will be covered in this $4.5 billion Omicron provision announced in that economic and fiscal update that we got in December of 2021. And the government actually has a pretty handy webpage that shows you each and every region and whether or not you are still technically considered to be under that 50% reduction, and as a result eligible for this at least until March 12th now with this extension. And we can see right here that Alberta, the entirety of Alberta, BC, Manitoba, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, Labrador, Northwest Territories, Nova Scotia, Nunavut, Ontario, PEI, Quebec, and Yukon, every single region there is under this 50% at least reduction, so you're eligible for the Canada Worker Lockdown Benefit. The only omission here is Saskatchewan, which I guess doesn't have that 50% reduction, and as a result isn't eligible for this Canada Worker Lockdown Benefit. So that is the extension, an additional month from February 12th to March 12th, where these looser sort of guidelines for what a lockdown is considered will be applied. Now they are able to extend this further. They can actually extend this definition all the way until the end of the program if that's what they want to do. It's kind of interesting that they wouldn't sort of do this of more longer term, so they wouldn't have to keep coming out and making these extension announcements every single month. But who knows why they do what they do. I want to show you something here inside of Bill C2. This is the bill that brought the Canada Worker Lockdown Benefit into effect, and it provides us a little bit more detail around how long this program can go, like when is the final date of it, and are they able to make any changes to that final date, and we can see that all here inside of this bill, and it looks a little complex, but it's super easy to understand here. These are regulations. Again, we talked about regulations. These are the things that they're able to change without actually passing new legislation through the House of Commons. Now, currently inside of the bill, May 7th, 2022, is marked as the last day of the Canada Worker Lockdown Benefit, last possible day. Of course, most people won't be able to apply for it if they don't also extend the looser sort of definition of a lockdown to make it that 50% that we've been talking about. That's what they just did for 1 month, but that could end after 1 month, so you'll have to stay tuned for that. But the program itself in its entirety, regardless of the definition of the lockdown, of what a lockdown order is set to end May 7th, but then there's this additional regulation described here where if they see fit, if they decide that this is something that they want to do, they can actually extend that date from May 7th all the way until July 2nd, 2022. So that July 2nd, 2022 is the absolute last day that we could have a Canada Worker Lockdown Benefit under this current legislation. Of course, if they decided to, they could pass new legislation to extend this further or even create some sort of new benefit or program if the Canada Worker Lockdown Benefit isn't working for them anymore. So that is technically the very last day, that July 2nd, 2022. And currently in the House of Commons, now that they've come back from their quite long holiday break, we have some indication of what they're prioritizing. And in terms of creating new benefits or implementing any sort of new financial policy from the Minister of Finance, well, we have an idea on what they think is most important. And the reason we have that is because Chrystia Freeland implemented a new bill or put forward a new bill, and it's currently gone to committee stage. So they've already had 2 votes for it, and they've gotten enough support to pass it in these first two readings. Now it goes to the Finance Committee and they sort of discuss it. If they pass it and send it back to the House of Commons, then there's one final vote to see if it goes into effect. But this actually doesn't really create any new benefits. I can show you here the actual text of this bill, Bill C8. It does a lot of things that changes sort of the Income Tax Act and income tax regulations, as well as implementing one of their main things that they talked about in the December 2021 economic update that Chrysler Freeland gave in front of the House of Commons. And this is the underused housing tax. This would be implementing the underused housing tax. This is kind of like the tax that they're putting on to non-resident Canadians or people who own property in Canada who are non-residents, and a tax on properties of 1% per year based on the value of the home if it is entirely vacant for the duration of that year. It sort of goes over the details and exactly how this tax would work, but we can see that this is more of a priority right now to talk about, along with the other things that are noted here in terms of the new financial legislation. This is what they're focusing on in the House of Commons right now, but if that changes, if they put forward any new bill or anything that could impact you, I'll talk about it right here on the channel, so make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And that just about covers it for the Canada Worker Lockdown Benefit Update and Extension. Let me know what you think down there in the comment section. I read as many as I possibly can. And while you're down there, check out the links in the description. Wealthsimple has a promotion where if you make an account and load it with 150 bucks, you get 50 bucks in there for free. So if you're interested in investing, that's a great place to start doing it. And when you use that link, you're directly supporting the channel. So I appreciate your support when you do that. But with all of that said, thanks so much for watching, everybody. I really hope this video has helped you out at least a little bit, and I'll see you next time.